Hi everyone, Dani here, and welcome to Spenelli Speaks and another Sunday night summary with Edward Rutherfurd's London. We are getting through this quite well, and we are almost to the finish line. So if you need any catching up with any previous chapters, or you have noticed that we are completed, please check the description. We have a full playlist for you to check out. If you are watching this in real time, you know we are doing this every Sunday night at 6 p.m. And this will bring us right up to right up to Thanksgiving here in 2025. We will also have a live stream the week after, so the Sunday after, we'll have that live stream. You'll see I'll put up, like in my community tab, I'll put up a list of questions or asking for questions, and I'll probably put that on my Instagram as well. So make sure that you hit that subscribe button, the notification bell, comment, and like this video. So in real time, we are up to chapter 14, which is titled St. Paul's. If you remember our last chapter, London has just experienced their Great Fire, which has taken out most of London, and now we're in that rebirth, rebuilding era, bringing us to 1675, and this chapter brings us all the way through until about 1708. So we're about 10 years past the last chapter. We are still following a few of the characters from the previous chapters. For me, I'm really getting bored of reading about the same characters. Normally, in real life, when I'm reading a series, I really like to see what happens to certain characters. But for a book like this, I liked seeing the generational switches and seeing how if the next generation was like the previous generation. And for this, I think we've been reading about the same characters for like 4 chapters, and it's just been really, to me as a reader, it's been a little bit stagnant. I really miss Silver Sleeves, which I never thought I would say in a million years, but I am. I think that character brings a lot of tension and a lot of fun to the story. So I'm really missing them, and I'm hoping that they come back soon. So yeah. But let's talk about who is in this chapter. So again, we're going to see that Sir Julius Ducat, they are a royalist. They have been in the king's back pocket since before they were even born. Their father was a royalist. So they are very wealthy. They have that title of Sir. They even move on to get a lordship. So they become like a baron, so they are Sir Lord Bocton. But then even more, they get an earldom, so they're the Earl of St. James. But it's all very coy and very humorous, the way the king is just kind of like throwing out titles and earldoms and all of these things because they can. And so it's like, does it really matter? But for Ducat, it does, and by the end of the chapter and his death, he does have an earldom. He's up to his same shenanigans of just, being a royalist and making sure that anything the king says, he does. Now, we also follow Richard Meredith, which in the previous chapter we know he was a doctor. He still technically would be a doctor, but he is no longer practicing. He is now a clergyman and a very big partner or participant in the Royal Society. So he is very interested in science. He is very interested in all of the new theories that are coming out, and he follows a lot of that, the astrology, the gravity, all of that. So you see a few science what am I talking about? Like references, and you see a few names that should be familiar, like Isaac Newton. And then the last person that we've seen before that we follow is Oh Be Joyful Carpenter. He, if you recall in the last chapter, he was a bit younger, but I think he's like the nephew of Martha, and that comes into play on his like feelings and how he kind of progresses through this chapter. the last one that we haven't seen really much before, we meet him in the last chapter, but he's more of like, he does more in this chapter, and that's Eugene Penny. So in our American accent, we would read this as Eugene. But because he is French, and because I listened to the audiobook, it is pronounced Eugene, which I really like. I really like that pronunciation. He is a French Huguenot, and that is a French Protestant. So with his character, we're really able to see how France and England are the same but opposite. So where England is constantly like persecuting their Catholics and they're a Protestant state, France is constantly persecuting their Protestants because they're a Catholic state. So it's like having that those opposites, but like they're doing the same thing. So when we meet Eugene in the last chapter, he's a young man and he has just come to London because of what's happening in France, and he feels safe because it's a Protestant state, and he's all good. Then in the beginning of this chapter, we see that he thinks like, oh, France is fine. I'll be fine over there. I miss my family. I'm going to go back. And we find that that's not the case. And his estate is kind of taken over by the military there. And they basically end up making him and his family escape because of the persecution of Protestants in France at the time. So he does end up coming back to London. Now, all that religious speak is, again, the main premise of this chapter. We've seen this a lot. And as you can imagine, historically, it is a huge factor because it is such a huge piece of people's lives and the way in which a lot was and is established, I guess you could say. So the main character we follow in this chapter is Oh Be Joyful Carpenter. And so he's a carpenter, and he has been chosen as one of the carpenters to help with the erection of St. Paul's Cathedral. And he has a lot of misgivings about himself and his faith because of what happened to Martha in the last chapter. If you recall, it was the Great Fire. She was trying to go and save somebody. She ran into a burning building. He ran in after her. He couldn't get to her. She perished. He feels a lot of guilt for that. He feels like he could have done more. And so he questions his faith quite a bit. Now, when he starts to work on St. Paul's, he starts to feel things, hear things, see things that make it seem as if the Church of England might still be being a little deceptive in their beliefs. And what I mean by that is it is always, the Church of England has always been in question because they used to be Catholic. They held on to a lot of these Catholic idols. They held on to a lot of Catholic, like popish things. They held on to a lot of things that they do in sermon within the congregation. So people kept questioning, like, well, that's Catholic, that's not Protestant. And so there's always this like underlying confusion as to whether or not the Church of England is being true to their Protestant foundation. And so when Oh Be Joyful starts to hear a few of these rumors and see things that he's seeing and feeling are Catholic, there's a lot of concern. And rightfully so. Historically, and it is mentioned here as well, King Charles on his deathbed quickly converts to Catholicism. And he did so because he had promised the French king that he would convert, because then there would be concessions. He would send his army. It was, people do weird things, and they don't always live up to their word. And when they do it in really mischievous ways, and that was his way of like, oh, I'll convert. Oh, but he converts on his deathbed, so that he's still, the King of France still has to uphold his end of the bargain. Questionable indeed. So there was a lot of things that happened that, like, Parliament really wanted to test that, and by doing so, they enacted this Test Act of 1673, wherein anyone in office, they basically had to deny that they had any Catholic beliefs. And the theory is if they were truly a Catholic parishioner, if they were a Catholic, they would not take that oath and they would have to step out of office. So it was kind of like cleansing the water of any Catholic person, which later they did change. But if you know historically, the leaders of the monarchy, they could not be Catholic. That only changed, I think, recently, like 2015 or something like that. So since this, and like moving forward, so centuries, the crown of England could not be Catholic. They had to be of the Church of England, Protestant. So that's the whole chapter, is kind of showing that visual of the building of St. Paul's a little bit, but mostly about all of the rumors and the confusion and just the underlying battle with just making sure that no Catholic holds office, that they aren't, in the monarchy. Like, it just, to me, I'm kind of like over this religious battle. I feel like it's been in several chapters, but it's historical, so obviously it has to be said. With our characters, they all just kind of trickle in through that narrative, and nothing too crazy happens. Opie Joyful gets locked in a basement for a little bit, but I mean, nothing nefarious. It's all just kind of, here's what happened, and that's it. So I'm really hoping that the next chapter is like several years down the road, like 30 years, so that we get brand new, fresh meat of characters and we can enjoy some devious acts from Silver Sleeves, perhaps. But I'm really tired of these characters. I'm really tired of, Richard Meredith and his just boringness, and I want some ducats that make a difference, not ducats that do things to line their pockets. So that being said, that is chapter 14. That is St. Paul's. And next week, I'm not sure what the chapter is called. Let's take a look-see. It is Gin Lane. So I do not recall that chapter at all. Let's look at the time. It looks like we're in 1750. So yes, we got a good break of years, about 50 years. So yes. Okay. So hopefully you'll tune in with me next week. Until then, I hope you are reading something fantastic, taking care, and staying safe. Until then, you know how it goes. Happy reading. Bye.